My older son unintentionally slept with my younger son's girlfriend. I told my younger son to stop blaming his brother for his mistakes, take care of his mental health, attend his girlfriend's baby shower, and move on. But he abandoned me and the family. I don't know when I started seeing my younger son as fragile. That sounds worse than I intended. He's not glass, he's not incapable. It's just some people bend and some people snap. He's always snapped, even as a teenager. If something went wrong, it wasn't just a bad day, it was a collapse. Doors closed, phone off, no appetite. That quiet that sits in the house and makes you feel like you're walking around something wounded. So when this happened, my first thought wasn't even anger. It was, oh God, he's going to spiral. The older one told me first. He didn't come in looking proud or anything. He looked irritated, defensive, like he was already tired of being judged. He said it just happened, that he and she had been talking for a while, that my younger son had been distant, depressed again, pulling away, that she felt lonely. He kept using that word, lonely. I asked him straight out if he went after her on purpose. He said no. Too fast, probably. But I don't think it was calculated. I really don't. I think it was messy and stupid and selfish. That's different than predatory. And I was angry. I told him it was wrong. I said, "That's your brother." I remember saying that. I don't remember exactly what he said back. Something about how their relationship was already falling apart, that she had been complaining for months, that it wasn't like he stole anything solid. And here's the part I haven't said out loud to anyone. I kind of believed that. Not the sleeping together. That part I hate. But the relationship, it wasn't steady. She was always on edge. He was always unsure. He'd quit another job 2 months ago. They were fighting about money, about his mood, about him trying harder. I heard it through walls, through phone calls. I'd find her crying in the kitchen sometimes, and he'd be in the bedroom staring at nothing. It wasn't healthy. I knew that. So when he found out, because of course he found out, I didn't think my older son ruined his life. I thought this was going to end anyway. Now it's just uglier. He came over that night shaking. He was pale and steady in a way that didn't feel steady. He said his brother betrayed him. He said I must have known. I told him I didn't. That part was true. He asked me if I thought it was unforgivable, and I hesitated. I didn't mean to. I just didn't want to answer in a way that locked him into something permanent. If I said yes, unforgivable, then what? Now he has to carry that. Now there's no path back, and he doesn't do well with permanent things. So I said something like, I think it's complicated. The look on his face, I still see it. He said, "It's not complicated, Mum." But it is. It is complicated when one son falls apart over breakups and loses weight and stops answering texts. And once, I don't even like remembering this, he scared me enough that I checked on him every hour through the night. I don't have that fear with the older one. He messes up, he deals with it, he moves forward, he doesn't implode. The younger one kept asking me if I was defending his brother. I said no. I said I just didn't want him making big decisions while he was this upset. I told him he should focus on himself, on therapy, on getting stable again. He said I was minimizing it. I said I wasn't. But maybe I was trying to make it smaller so it wouldn't swallow him. He started talking about cutting his brother off completely, forever. I said, maybe don't decide that tonight. He said I always do this, always smooth things over. Always ask him to be the bigger person. I don't remember ever using that phrase, but maybe I have. It sounds like something I'd say. What I didn't say is that I don't trust him to survive isolation. He says he'll cut everyone off and move out of town and start over. But he doesn't have stable work. He's behind on rent. I help him. If he leaves in anger, who catches him when he falls? He accused me of choosing sides. I said I wasn't choosing anyone, but I told him he should try to understand that relationships are complicated, that sometimes people connect in ways they don't plan to. I even said, and I regret this, that maybe she and his brother had something real, and it just came out the wrong way. The second it left my mouth, I saw it hit him. Like I'd confirmed his worst fear, that he was replaceable, that he was temporary. He said, very calmly, so he didn't steal anything permanent. I didn't answer. Because that's exactly what I'd been thinking. After that, he stopped arguing. That's worse than yelling. He just got quiet and said he might move, somewhere far, somewhere where he doesn't have to compete. Compete, as if I've ever made them compete. But maybe I have in ways I don't see. I've started doing small things I don't feel proud of. I told my older son not to post anything about the girl online. I told him to keep distance publicly. I told my younger son that his brother feels terrible, which isn't fully accurate. He feels defensive, not devastated. But I softened it. Because I thought maybe if my younger one believed there was remorse, he wouldn't burn everything down. I told each of them slightly different versions of the same story. Not lies, just Edits. I tell myself I'm keeping the peace, that I'm preventing a permanent fracture over something that realistically might have ended in 6 months anyway. But I've noticed my younger son doesn't stay long when he visits now. He doesn't ask for help the same way. When I offer money, he says he'll figure it out. He doesn't call as much. And I keep thinking, if he spirals again, at least I'll know where he is. But I'm starting to realize he might not spiral. He might just leave. And I don't know which is worse. A few weeks later, he texted me instead of coming by. That alone felt off. He said he found a roommate situation 2 hours away. Cheap. Temporary. Just a reset. Reset. Like he's wiping us. I told him it sounded impulsive. He said he's thought about it a lot. He said he can't heal in the same zip code. I asked if this was about his brother or about her. He said, it's about you, too. I didn't respond for a long time. Because I don't know how to protect someone who thinks I'm the one hurting him. And I'm not even sure anymore if I've been protecting him at all. Follow up, it's been about 3 months since he moved. I say moved, like it was organized. It wasn't. He packed in 2 days. Didn't tell his brother. I found out he'd already signed something when he asked me to forward his mail. I told everyone it was temporary. I don't know why I did that. I think if I say it enough, it sounds less like abandonment. My older son found out from my sister's kid. Apparently someone mentioned it at a barbecue. He called me annoyed, not hurt. Said, so he's running away now. I told him not to frame it like that. He said I'm the only one who doesn't see that everything is always dramatic with him. I didn't defend either of them. I just said, let's not escalate. The younger one stopped taking money from me. The first time I transferred it anyway, he sent it back with a note that just said, I'm good. He is not good. He has never been good without help. But apparently he is now. Extended family started asking questions at my niece's birthday. I told them he needed a reset, a new environment, and a fresh start. I didn't mention the affair. I didn't mention the screaming that first week. I kept it vague. Later that night, he texted me. I heard you told them I just needed space. That's not what happened. I said I was protecting him from gossip, he replied. From whose narrative? He's been in therapy, I can tell. He uses language that sounds rehearsed but calm. It unsettles me. The older one asked if he could bring her to a small family dinner. It's been months, he said. I told him it wasn't the right time. He accused me of punishing him to appease his brother. I told him it wasn't about appeasing anyone. The younger one posted something online about betrayal and patterns repeating. No names, but anyone who knows us could connect it. 2 of my friends messaged me asking if everything was okay. I wanted to call him and yell. Instead, I typed, please don't air family issues publicly. He responded, you mean don't challenge the edited version? I don't even remember telling him I edited anything. Maybe he just knows. There was a moment, small, but it stuck with me, when I slipped. We were on the phone and I said, you know you've had episodes before where things felt bigger than they were. Silence. Then he said, so this is an episode. I tried to explain I meant emotional intensity, not delusion. But it sounded bad even to me, like I was diagnosing him to discredit him. He said, you've always needed me to be unstable. It makes your choices make sense. That felt unfair, cruel even. I've never needed him unstable. I've just prepared for it. His roommate, I've never met him, seems to be a stabilizing influence. They cook. They have some routine. He mentioned going to the gym. He sounds steadier than I've heard him in years. Instead of relief, I feel something like displacement. If he's stable without me, what was I holding together all this time? Then I had a minor health scare. Nothing dramatic. Some test results that required follow-up. I told both of them. The older one immediately offered to drive me. The younger one asked for details and said he'd come if it was serious. I felt resentful at that, which is ridiculous. He lives 2 hours away. He has a job now, part-time, but still. I told the older one I'd handle it. I didn't want to look like I needed him more. The paperwork for refinancing the house required both of their signatures. The younger one delayed, not aggressively, just slow, weeks. When I asked, he said he was reviewing it carefully. He's never reviewed anything carefully in his life. He used to skim contracts. Now he's meticulous. The older one called him controlling, said he was using bureaucracy to punish everyone. I told him to stop assuming malice. I'm tired of being the translator. I tried to stage a casual dinner when the younger one came into town. I told each of them separately it would be low pressure, just food. No heavy talk. It was stiff from the second they sat down. My older son tried to joke. My younger one answered politely, like they were co-workers. At one point, my older son said, we were all unhappy then. I don't think he meant it as an attack, but my younger son's face changed. He said, you don't get to rewrite my relationship to justify what you did. It wasn't loud. It was worse, controlled. I jumped in. I said, "Nobody is rewriting anything. Let's not dissect the past." They both looked at me like I was the problem. Dinner ended early. A week later, my younger son sent a message. He said he needs distance from the family system, not just his brother, the system. He said every time he expresses hurt, it gets reframed as instability. Every time he draws a boundary, it's labeled impulsive. He said he doesn't feel seen as an adult. I wanted to argue each point, to clarify, to defend myself line by line. Instead, I typed, "I'm sorry you feel that way." He didn't respond for 2 days, and I realized something I hadn't let myself think before. He might not spiral, he might not crash. He might build a life that doesn't require me at all. And if that happens, I can't tell myself I was protecting him. I'll have to admit I was protecting my version of him. The older one is starting to pull back too. He told me recently he feels like I'd made him the villain to keep the peace. He said, "You act like I destroyed a fragile ecosystem. It was already broken." I didn't know how to answer that, because maybe it was already broken, but I was the one insisting we keep living inside it. Last week, the younger one declined coming home for the holiday unless his brother wasn't there. I asked if we could split the day. He said that feels performative. Everything I do lately gets labeled. I told him if he keeps making conditions, we'll never move forward. He said forward doesn't mean togethers. I still believe the relationship he lost wasn't permanent. I still think it would have ended. But I'm starting to see that what he lost wasn't just her. It was the belief that I would stand behind him without qualifiers. And I'm not sure I ever have. Follow-up, I didn't expect it to get procedural. That's the word that keeps coming to mind lately. Not emotional, not explosive. Procedural. My younger son emailed me with bullet points. He wants to be removed from anything financially tied to me or his brother, the house paperwork. The small savings account I opened years ago when he couldn't qualify for his own. His name is on the utility backup authorization. Things I honestly forgot were still connected. He wrote that he's doing this for clarity. I read that word 5 times. Clarity sounds clean. It sounds mature. It also sounds like detachment. He offered to meet with a lawyer to restructure everything. He said he doesn't want to owe me anymore. He put that in quotes, like he was quoting me, even though I've never said that exact word. At least I don't think I have. The older one called it dramatic. Said, "He's acting like you're running a corporation." I told him to stop reducing it, but privately I felt defensive. It's not about control. I never saw it as control. It was protection. If he lost a job, if something happened, he wouldn't be stranded. Now he's removing the safety net himself. The paperwork turned into meetings, phone calls. I had to sit across from him in a small office with beige walls and fluorescent lights while a lawyer explained how we'd separate accounts and responsibilities. He was calm. He had notes. He asked questions I wouldn't have thought to ask. The lawyer complimented his preparedness. I felt unnecessary. When we left, I asked him if this was really needed. He said, "Yes. I don't want future arguments to include money." Future arguments, not if, when. The older one has started pulling back in a different way. He still comes by, but there's an edge now. He asked me last week if I'd ever admit that I've made him the resilient one, so I don't have to worry about him. I said that's ridiculous. He said, "It's convenient." That hurt. Because I don't think I've ignored him. I just haven't feared for him the same way. A family friend, someone who's known them since they were little, apparently spoke to my younger son recently. I don't know what was said, but at a gathering she told me gently that he seems very grounded and that maybe I should listen more. As if I've been talking over him for years. I tried therapy, just one session. I didn't tell either of them. The therapist asked me who I worry about more. I answered without thinking, she noticed. She used the phrase, emotional hierarchy. I didn't like that. It sounded clinical, accusatory. I haven't gone back yet. The younger one started seeing someone new. I found out through my sister, not from him. When I asked casually if he was dating, he said, "I'm keeping my personal life separate for now." Separate from what? From me. There was a small emergency with the house. A plumbing issue. Expensive. Normally I'd call my older son for help navigating contractors. I hesitated. I didn't want him to feel like I only reach out when I need something practical. I ended up calling him anyway. He helped. But afterwards he said, "You know you don't have to act like I'm the villain to keep him calm." I don't think I act like that. Do I? He's now talking about possibly moving for work. Not because of this, he says, just opportunity. But I hear it differently. I hear distance. At a cousin's wedding, both boys were invited. They hadn't been in the same room outside my house since that dinner. I'd begged them, separately, to just be civil. They were more than civil. They were polite strangers. They shook hands, smiled in photos. Anyone watching would think nothing had happened. It almost made me hopeful. Then later that night, my younger son told me quietly that performative peace exhausts him, that he doesn't want to keep proving he can behave, as if I've asked him to perform stably all his life. A week after that, he sent a long letter, not accusatory exactly, structured. He listed moments from childhood I barely remember, times I told him he was too sensitive, times I asked him to let his brother have this one. Sometimes I smoothed over arguments by asking him to apologize first because he was more emotionally aware. I don't remember it like that. I remember trying to teach him conflict resolution. I remember trying to prevent escalation. He called it conditioning. I started typing responses to each memory, explaining context, clarifying intent. I deleted them all. Instead, I wrote, "I'm thinking about what you said." He didn't respond. A few days later, I accidentally forwarded a text meant for my older son to him. It was harmless, just me venting that I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells. But he saw it. He replied, "That's how I felt for years." And then he blocked me on social media. Extended family keeps telling me to fix it, as if I have a wrench somewhere. As if I can tighten one screw and they'll sit back down at the same table without tension humming under everything. My older son finally said he might take that job out of state. He said there's nothing keeping him here long term. I wanted to say, I am, but that felt manipulative. So now I'm sitting in a house that used to feel full of noise and imbalance and constant management, and I'm realizing something uncomfortable. When they were both here, even fighting, I had a role: mediator, stabilizer, translator. Now they're building lives that don't require translation. And I don't know if I'm grieving the loss of closeness or the loss of control over the story I've told myself about who needed protecting. Follow-up. I used to think distance would be loud. Doors slamming, blocking numbers, big speeches. It isn't, it's scheduled calls. My younger son sent me a message saying, "For now, let's keep it to one call a month. I need structure, like I'm something to manage." The first scheduled call felt like a dentist appointment. I wrote down topics so there wouldn't be awkward silences. Weather, work, his apartment. I almost asked about his girlfriend but stopped myself. He's made it clear I don't get automatic access anymore. When the call ended, he said, "Okay, top next month. Calm, efficient. No love you at the end." I didn't cry. I just felt managed. Meanwhile, my older son has started correcting people directly. At a family dinner, someone made a comment about him stealing his brother's girlfriend. He didn't look at me. He said, "That's not how it happened." I used to soften those conversations before they got to that point. Now he's rewriting it in real time. He says they connected after things were already breaking, that it wasn't predatory, that adults make choices. He's not asking me to back him up. That might be worse. There was a financial review during all the restructuring, just to separate everything cleanly. The accountant pointed out that keeping certain accounts joint had tax advantages for me. I genuinely hadn't thought about it that way. It wasn't some scheme. But sitting there, hearing it framed as a benefit, I suddenly understood how it could look. Like I had reasons beyond protection. I didn't tell my younger son that part. The extended family has started dividing quietly. No one says it outright, but invitations are selective. Conversations shift when I enter the room. One aunt told me gently that maybe I've held the boys in certain roles, held them, like they're props. My older son came over one night and said something I wasn't expecting. He said he's tired of being assumed okay, that when he messes up, it's moral failure. When his brother messes up, it's mental health. I tried to say that's not fair. He said, "Exactly." I don't know how to hold both truths at once. Then there was the pregnancy. He told me first, of course. His girlfriend, the same one, is pregnant. He sounded nervous in a way I haven't heard before. Not defensive, not arrogant, just unsure. They want to celebrate, a small gathering. I said we should absolutely celebrate, and immediately thought about his brother. I asked my younger son if he would come. I tried to phrase it carefully. I said it wasn't about reconciliation, just acknowledgement. A baby is separate from past conflict. He responded hours later, "I wish them well. I won't be attending." I asked if it was permanent or just this event. He said, "Please don't negotiate," as if joy is a bargaining chip. The celebration was modest. Cake, a few close friends, some family. There was a moment when my older son made a small speech. He thanked everyone for showing up, despite everything. He didn't say his brother's name. He didn't have to. The empty space was obvious. Afterwards, someone asked where the younger one was. I said he had work. My older son didn't correct me. Later that night, he said quietly, "You don't have to keep covering." I didn't realize I still was. A holiday passed without both of them under the same roof. First time ever. I split the day, morning with one, evening with the other. It felt artificial, like I was shuttling between two separate families. At one point during the holiday dinner, my older son again mentioned possibly moving out of state before the baby comes. Better job offer, more space. I nodded supportively. Inside, I felt the house shrinking around me. I've started thinking about selling it. Not dramatically, just practically. If neither of them anchors here, what am I preserving? My younger son declined another milestone event recently, a small gender reveal. He sent a polite message. I hope it's a healthy pregnancy. No bitterness. Just absence. Absence is harder to argue with than anger. There was a health setback for me last month. Minor, but it required a few weeks of limited mobility. I hired outside help instead of calling either of them. It felt necessary. I didn't want to test who would show up faster, or who would feel obligated. During my next scheduled call, my younger son mentioned updating his emergency contact. It's his roommate now, not me. He didn't say it pointedly, just as a practical note. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I realized something then. He's not punishing me. He's reorganizing his life in a way where I'm not central. And my older son, despite everything, is building a family that might take him physically away. I've spent years believing my job was to prevent collapse, but maybe I'd prevented growth. I reread his old letter last week. There's one memory I can't dispute anymore. A school incident. He was humiliated publicly. I told him to let it go because it wasn't worth escalating. He wrote that moment taught him his pain was negotiable. I don't remember saying it coldly. I probably said it gently. But gentle can still land as dismissal. I don't know what accountability looks like. Not the word, the actual behavior. Apologies feel thin if they're followed by explanations. Silence feels like avoidance. Mediation feels forced. For the first time, I sent him a message without trying to steer the outcome. I wrote, "If I've minimized you to keep things stable, I need to understand that. What would accountability actually look like to you?" I didn't add context, didn't defend myself, didn't mention his brother. I just asked. He hasn't responded yet. And I'm trying, very consciously, not to fill the silence with a strategy. He said, accountability would probably look like you telling the truth without managing everyone's reaction to it. It would look like naming what happened without explaining why it wasn't that bad. It would look like not asking me to help you feel better about it. My first instinct was still the same old instinct, to argue with the wording. To say that wasn't fair, that I never thought it was. Not that bad, that I was trying to keep this family from splitting open in a way none of us could survive. But maybe that is the truth. I keep circling without wanting to stand inside it. I was so focused on preventing the break that I kept asking the broken person to carry the weight of everyone else's comfort. I didn't reply right away. For once, I didn't trust my first draft of myself. A few days later, I sent him something shorter than anything I've sent in months. I said, "Your brother betrayed you." I minimized it. I kept editing the story because I was afraid of losing both of you, and in doing that, I made your pain feel negotiable. You were right about that. I'm sorry. No explanation, no but, no mention of his brother's version, or her loneliness, or the instability of the relationship, or how scared I was he'd spiral. Just that, he didn't forgive me. What he said was, "Thank you for saying it clearly." That was it. And strangely, that hurt more than anger would have, because it sounded careful, measured, like something given, not felt. But it was honest, more honest than anything we'd said to each other in a long time. We still do the scheduled calls. His brother is still having a baby. They still do not speak unless they have to. The family is still split in all the quiet ways families split long before anyone admits it out loud. Nothing tied itself back together just because I finally used the right words. That's the part I'm learning too late. Sometimes accountability is not the bridge back. Sometimes it is just standing still long enough to stop calling distance a misunderstanding. I used to think my job as a mother was to hold the whole thing together, no matter what shape it took. Now I think maybe I confused holding it together with refusing to let it change. I still don't know what this family will look like in 5 years. I don't know if my younger son will ever trust me in the old way again. I don't know if my older son will ever believe I saw him clearly either. I don't know whether holidays will stay divided, or whether one day there will be a table big enough for all this history without someone choking on it. I only know that the story I kept telling myself, that I was protecting him, that I was protecting all of them, doesn't fit as neatly anymore. Maybe protection, done badly enough, just becomes another way of deciding whose pain gets to be real. And maybe that is the ending, if I'm honest. He is building a life where I am no longer the translator of his feelings, and for the first time, I am trying to love him without rewriting him. Analysis. This story reads like a quiet case study in emotional narrative control, and I land firmly on the younger son's side. Not because the older brother's betrayal wasn't messy or complicated, it absolutely was, but because the real damage in this story isn't the affair. It's the mother's long-standing habit of reframing conflict in ways that protect the system rather than the person who was hurt by it. The mother clearly sees herself as a stabilizer. In her own mind, she is the only adult in the room, the one preventing a fragile son from collapsing and a stubborn son from escalating. But what the story reveals, unintentionally, is that her definition of stability depends on managing the younger son's reactions instead of addressing the older son's behavior directly. The affair becomes complicated, the betrayal becomes something that might have ended anyway, and the injured party becomes the person who must be careful not to spiral. That framing is the core injustice of the narrative. The younger son isn't actually asking for revenge or dramatic consequences. What he wanted, very simply, was recognition that a boundary had been violated. Instead, he was given analysis, context, probability. The relationship might have failed anyway. The connection between the brother and the girlfriend might have been real. From the mother's perspective, these statements are rational. But to someone who has just been betrayed by both a partner and a sibling, they function as subtle erasure. What makes the story psychologically interesting is that the mother isn't malicious. She genuinely believes she's protecting him. Yet that belief reveals a deeper pattern. She has cast her sons into fixed emotional roles. One is fragile and must be managed. The other is resilient and therefore expendable. When families assign those roles early, they often stop seeing the individuals inside them. That's why both sons eventually push back. The younger son's reaction is the most obvious. He removes himself from the environment entirely and rebuilds his life without the family structure that constantly interpreted his feelings for him. But the older son's frustration is just as telling. He realizes he's been designated the durable one, the person who absorbs blame because he doesn't collapse. In other words, both sons were flattened into functional positions within the household narrative. The mother calls herself a mediator. In practice, she became a narrative editor. She softened language, hid facts from extended family, and told each son slightly different versions of events to prevent escalation. That might maintain short-term peace, but it corrodes trust long-term. People can tolerate painful truths far more easily than they can tolerate feeling like their experience is being rewritten. The most revealing moment in the story isn't the betrayal or the move away. It's the younger son's accusation that she needed him to be unstable so her decisions would make sense. That statement sounds cruel on the surface, but it exposes the emotional architecture of the entire family. If he stops being fragile, then her justifications for smoothing over the betrayal collapse. And that's exactly what happens. He doesn't spiral, he stabilizes. Once that happens, the mother loses the central premise that guided her behavior for years. The tragedy here isn't that the family broke. Families fracture all the time. The tragedy is that the fracture happened because one person kept trying to control the story rather than allowing the people inside it to own their experiences. In the end, the younger son's distance isn't punishment, it's clarity.